Hello, hi everyone. So today I'm back and I want to talk about certain realizations, certain conclusions and theories that I've been developing over the last 2 to 3 years. So, like I mentioned before, the last 2 3 years have been quite transformative for me. I went through a lot of interesting experiences, some of which I can't even explain. Um, I don't know whether to call it a spiritual awakening or something like that because people have written about such things online. I mean, I went and found all of that. But one of the most significant things that happened to me during this period of time is having realizations about our existence and our purpose and things like that. And maybe everybody goes through such a phase, and this was just my phase. But there are certain hypotheses and theories that I've developed based on all the intuitive thoughts and realizations that I had. And I'm thinking, I mean, it makes sense to me, so I thought I might as well share it with the world too. Um, so, where do I start? I think for me, my thoughts started from the point that we all have some kind of mental energy. Like, we all have a soul, we talk about that. But I think that a better way to define it would be mental energy. And this is a type of energy that we can't really perceive. Like, we can't see it or measure it or gauge it in some way and then study it using science. We're not able to do that. But there is something about the power of our mind, right? And I have I have concluded that there are four things that really affect this mental energy. These are my own derivations and conclusions. These four things are: first, it's thoughts, then it's intention. The third is your desire in relation to these thoughts and intentions. And then the fourth is willpower. These four things interact with each other within our mind, in our mental energy, and I think that is the force that runs everything basically. Um, so, unfortunately, because us as human beings, our body, us, if you consider us as an instrument, we are unable to like measure this form of energy in any way, right? Because in science we need to be able to measure something, gauge something, observe something using our five senses, which is like your sight, your hearing, your smell, your taste, your touch. Like, we need to be able to physically measure something in order for it to be like scientifically accessible to us. But I actually think that we should take into consideration that there exists a form of energy that we cannot see or perceive. And I think we all intuitively know this. And I think our intuition actually plays a really big role in this. Our intuition is something that helps us gauge mental energy, or what perhaps mental energy is trying to communicate with us. But unfortunately, because this is so vague and the margin of error is so high, most of the time intuitions and people who speak from their gut or and things like that, just it ends up becoming stories and just imaginative things. And it doesn't really make sense to us because it's actually very difficult for us as human beings in this physical form to be able to gauge or measure or understand mental energy properly. So this is what I've arrived at. And what I would like to theorize, or like what my hypothesis about this is that I think that what first existed in this universe was some kind of very strong and very powerful mental energy, something that we in our physical form can't perceive at all. And perhaps the reason for creation or existence is a very strong mental energy, very strong thoughts, intentions, desire, and will, like getting concentrated and then exploding into existence. And I believe that the reason, or what was the driving force, was just the desire to be, the desire to exist physically, to feel, to see, to touch, to be able to um, perceive physically. Basically, I think that that is the reason for creation now. I mean, this is my conclusion I've arrived at. And because we all intuitively feel this energy and we can't really put a finger on it, so we've created God and we say that there exists God and there are so many religions and different forms of it. But I feel like that's all our like we're all trying to basically perceive this mental energy which we can't really communicate with using whatever we have right now, because it's not in a physical form, it's not in a form uh, that is accessible to us basically. So yeah, I think creation started from a very strong and powerful mental energy, a very powerful mind, if you may. And along the way with like on earth, evolution and everything has happened. I feel like even evolution is a function of mental energy. Evolution has occurred because of the desire, the will, the strong thought and intention to exist in more like evolving forms until we've reached the human body, the human form, which seems to perhaps satisfy the needs and desires of this mental energy that exists in the world. And it's probably a reflection of us. This mental energy is probably a reflection of us in physical form. So we each may have a certain kind of mental energy associated with us, which we call soul, which we call like a lot of different things, right, in religion and all of that. But what I'm basically trying to say is that perhaps what exists is not a god, it's probably just a form of energy, or some kind of a form that we just can't perceive. And it may not be almighty, and it may not be like in human form, it may not be that, but it it may be in a form that has its own rules and laws and all of that. Like in our world, in our physical world, we have laws, right? Like we have laws of gravity, we have a lot of like laws of physics and all of that, based on which this universe functions. Similarly, I think that this mental energy that we can't perceive also has laws and rules and things according to which it can exist and it can um, communicate with us. And yeah, I think that's what exists. And I think that perhaps our idea of there being a singular god or an almighty, all powerful god that is of like human form, or like can do anything, you know, that I don't think is the truth anymore. This is my theory of creation. Now of course that brings the question, where did this mental energy come from? Like that I also don't know, but so far what I feel I've figured out is that I think there existed a very strong and powerful mental energy that really wanted to exist, wanted to feel in physical form. And from that great desire to be, uh, the universe was born, Big Bang, or you know, however creation happened. And from that point onwards, like what I intuitively feel is that this mental energy may have, with like the expansion of the physical world, it may have also grown and fractured and separated into like so many different mental energies that are all functioning and operating like with each other and interacting with each other, almost like the World Wide Web. I don't know why I called it World Wide Web. Like the internet. Why did I call it the World Wide Web? Because of like how I'm like imagining it in my head, right? So I think that there may be like a whole world or a whole realm of energy that is of mental in nature, something that we can't physically perceive, that is just interacting with each other in some kind of web, like constantly, and we are all affected by it because we all exist in that. And it may be just like us, it may be flawed in nature, it may not be a perfect god or whatever, um but yeah, this is my current theory. And I also think that the more I've been thinking about all of these things and I observe our physical world, right, I do think that clues about how this other realm exists within us and around us, uh, the clues of that are present in our physical world. Like, for instance, I said the internet, right? I think the internet is a reflection of how this mental energy is interacting with uh, each other and how it exists around us. And of course, I'm not sure about this, but I think that that's also the reason why, like, a lot of us become intrigued by astrology. Now, I have never been a believer of astrology or anything like that. I'm very, like, I was brought up very scientific, in that sort of environment, like constantly thinking about things from a very logical point of view, from things. Uh, Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Blah, blah, blah. What was I trying to say? Like, yeah, I have never been a believer of all of this. In fact, I always, like, if somebody told me something about astrology, I would just be like, whatever, rubbish, forget it. And I think that most of the interpretations that astrologers make today, because they are human in nature and they are trying to, in a way, I think they are trying to perceive this imperceptible thing that is our universe, that is part of our universe that we can't see. Um, that's why it's fraught with inaccuracies, and it's highly dependent on the human who is trying to interpret this, right? So it'll be dependent on their knowledge and their experience and their exposure and their understanding of the world, their imagination, their stories. So all of those things will affect how they're trying to interpret and, like, explain things to the world. And that's why it just sounds idiotic to a lot of people. Sometimes some parts of it make sense because perhaps some sort of communication has happened correctly, or we have observed patterns and stars and things like that, and we have drawn some kind of correct conclusions about certain things. And so yeah, I do think that possibly there could be something to astrology, but I think it needs to be studied in a more scientific manner. I actually think that more scientific minded people, like geniuses, should actually be looking into astrology and things like that, and try to sort of interpret this imperceptible form of energy better. Uh, yeah, that's just what I think should happen in the world. Of course, these are conclusions that took a long time for me to arrive at, and there's a lot of, like, intuitive as well as intellectual. You know, uh, there's an intuitive and intellectual side of me that I've applied to it in order to come to these conclusions. So yeah, but the most important thing that I've drawn from this is that perhaps the reason for our existence is much simpler than we think. We just wanted to exist, to be, to live, to have physical form, uh, to be able to see, to be able to hear, to be able to smell, to touch, to taste. Um, we perhaps, if we have a mental energy, we have a mental energy associated with our physical bodies, and particularly our mind. That's what I think is the crux of this. Then the reason that you may have manifested yourself into this world may be for the simple reason to just exist and feel and enjoy life in the way that it's been created on this planet. And it just it made my perspective on a lot of things a lot I don't know, very different. Like, because if our reason to exist is so simple, I mean, look at what we're doing with our lives, with the world, with the planet. Our greed, our selfishness, our insatiable desire for more, none of that may be the reason why we existed. And I don't know. I think we could, if we all realize what we're here for, I think we could live in a better world, maybe have a little less selfishness, a little less greed. Maybe we can be satisfied with what we have. There is another aspect to this actually that I started to think about, but that again is a bit more like my scientific mind fully doesn't fully accept it yet. So I'm not sure about this part, but I think that so there's somewhere I had read about, or I'd watched some videos, science videos about uh, interaction of particles. Basically, if something existed in binary form, like two parts to it, and if those two particles are separated in the universe and they are put in like different corners of the universe, but if one particle experiences something, then the other also responds to it, and regardless of how far apart they are in the universe. And this was a physics experiment or some, I'm so sorry I didn't do my study on this properly, but uh, there is some sort of rule or law with regards to this, or it's an observation that scientists have made, that particles do tend to behave in this manner if they were originally like one, they were binary. And that just got me again intuitively thinking that, you know, we all have these ideas of soulmate and many other things in the world. Perhaps if our reason to exist is just to be, then a part of it may also be our desire to be with someone specific. Like, if suppose our mental energy also exists like this, like in two, and it's like two mental energies are wrapped around each other, are like one in imperceptible form, then perhaps their desire to want to exist in physical form comes from their desire to be with each other in physical form. And so they might then be born into this world as two separate human beings. And perhaps then there is someone who is a soulmate to you. Now, whether or not they're able to manifest into this world at the correct time as you, or how the rules of all that work, even I don't know. I don't know it yet. But this is just again a hypothesis that I'm putting out there. I think that there is a possibility that we've manifested ourselves to, yes, experience life, to live, to just physically be, but also to perhaps be with someone who in imperceptible form is our like partner. Or, you know, I don't know how the imperceptible world works, so possibly there could be multiple partners also for a certain person. Again, all of this is going to start sounding really vague the more I go into it, because it is such a vague thing to try to understand. But yes, I do think that this other realm exists, and everything that we express, that we try to understand of it, ends up coming out in like an imaginative form, because we have to use our imagination in order to explain it. And that is why a lot of it goes into storytelling and, you know, the creation of religions and like punishments and this and that, because that all of that comes from human interpretation and human imagination that wants to interpret this like imperceptible form of energy. This is a lot. Like, this is a jam-packed video. So yeah, I do think that there's a possibility that if suppose I have mental energy, okay, and I have a person, not a person, sorry, another mental energy that I'm like bonded with, and I really want to exist in physical form and experience physical life with this person. And so then I've manifested myself into this world. But maybe I'm not God, so I can't like manifest myself into a situation where I will easily meet this person. I don't know what the rules of that are, like how like that mental energy gets manifested in physical form in this world. There may be some laws about that we don't understand yet. So I've manifested myself here to be with someone, and maybe that person has also manifested, again, sorry, not that person, that mental energy has also manifested themselves as a person in this world to be with me. Then possibly, if there is a way for us to find our correct partner, like if we are able to somehow, you know, in the future be able to understand how this mental energy works and how it manifests itself in this world. And I do think there is some relation with birth times and all of that, because, you know, that's something that astrology is obsessed with. So why are these birth times significant? What are the interactions that make it significant? Like, what are the observations that these astrologers are making, right, in terms of like the positions of things? Because suppose there exists, like the internet, there exists like a web of mental energy that we can't see or perceive, and that's all around us, in us, through the planets and all of that. Then perhaps birth time is significant because these energies are also interacting with each other, um, and they might be affected by the physical positions of things. Like, they might be affected by the physical positions of things, and that's the reason why uh, these birth times and all of that are significant. So, yeah, anyway, I've been like having thoughts about all of these things, and I personally think that it would be a good idea if very intelligent, very scientific minded persons looked more deeply into uh, this imperceptible part, or at least consider the possibility that this exists. And is there a way for us to study it? Of course, I think that it will always be fraught with error. The margin of error will always be like 99%, and like 1% maybe like we come to the correct conclusion about something. But I mean, if we look into it, I think there's room for us to maybe find a way. Suppose, like, I have manifested myself for a specific person, right? If I am able to achieve that purpose for which I have manifested myself in this world, then perhaps I won't. I mean, I won't talk about myself. I don't think I'm such a greedy or selfish person, but I think that generally for people, if they're able to attain their purpose, if they're able to achieve that kind of fulfillment and satisfaction in life by being with that right partner, then perhaps this world will like automatically become a better place, right? Because uh, people will not then be looking for other ways to make themselves happy. Basically, the greed, the desire for power, the desire for more, selfishness, the lack of care that people have towards like each other, all of that may sort of reduce if you're able to finally attain your purpose, the purpose that your mental energy has manifested itself for. If being with someone physically in this world, being able to live, being able to experience life together, all the joys of it, of uh, like everything that the world has to offer us, right? We have food, we have like such wonderful tasting food and so many different cuisines, all these things that we've developed, like we can experience all of that. um, Lifestyle, entertainment, all of those things, like, but I think if we are able to find that right person, uh, again, this is a hypothesis right now, but perhaps we will achieve that, that highest point in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sorry, I had to like quickly stop for a second. There was just some disturbance going on. So yeah, I was saying, if we are able to somehow find our purpose for existence, and we are able to achieve that level of fulfillment and satisfaction in our lives, then perhaps a lot of the bad that's actually going on in this world will just cease to exist, because human greed, selfishness, and that extreme, because I think that's what everyone is doing, right? Everyone is looking for a way to make themselves happy. They're seeking happiness, they're seeking some kind of satisfaction, some kind of fulfillment, and when people are not able to get that in their lives, then I think that's when they go into like negative parts of life, right? Where they're overcome with greed and selfishness and desire for power, and they're obsessed with ego and showing off and like all of these things. But if we are truly able to find our real purpose for existence, and if we are able to achieve that purpose, and suppose it is in just existing physically and being able to enjoy life physically, and also perhaps it is in being with someone specific who is in imperceptible form, in like mental energy form, who is our correct partner. If we are able to attain that sense of fulfillment in life by achieving this purpose of ours, that is the real reason why we've manifested ourselves, uh, perhaps we won't then resort to so much greed and selfishness and carelessness with regards to our beautiful planet, um, that gives us so much. And it might just help to make the world a better place. And yeah, we won't be seeking like fulfillment in all these other bad things that just we're never satisfied with, right? You always want more, you always want something else. um, so yeah, these are like some of my thoughts and some of the theories and hypotheses that I've been developing over the last couple of years. And I thought I felt like mentally like ready enough to like talk about them. But I'm sorry, I'm not using a script or anything, because I wanted to just talk from like just talk honestly and like openly from my point of view, which even right now I can say I could be wrong about a lot of things as well, because this is something that is likely to have a huge margin of error no matter who tries to interpret things. But I think to some degree, on a general and basic level, I've arrived at certain conclusions that do make a lot of sense to me, and I hope they make sense to other people as well. And I hope somehow it helps to make this world a better place, perhaps. Uh, and I hope we can all find happiness with what we have, and which is beautiful. I mean, look at this planet, look at everything it gives us, and look at how we are treating her. Yeah, I like to call Earth her. I think she's like feminine. um, so anyway, this was like a bunch of different thoughts. It might be a bit too much for people, uh, but I'm just gonna put it out there and see. Yeah, that's it.